Your host, Dan Dickow, on the Field of 68 Media Network, is a unique and special podcast because it's with a friend of mine who I think has a tremendous impact in the Spokane community as a physical therapy workout gym owner called U District, as well as the head strength and conditioning coach at Gonzaga University, where he oversees all the athletic programs, but in particular works most closely with the women's program. None other than a good friend of mine, Mike Nilson. Mike Nilson and I will go into detail, talk about what makes Gonzaga special, what made his team, that initial Elite Eight team in the 1999 NCAA tournament, so special and unique. I'm looking forward to hearing some of his thoughts about training and the importance of being a leader and the impact John Stockton has had on so many of us in Gonzaga basketball. Without further ado, Mike Nilson. Today's is an expert not only as a player, but also as a coach, as a motivator, someone who is a good friend of mine. I got to know him as a teammate many years ago at Gonzaga. Currently the head strength and conditioning coach at Gonzaga, also a owner of U District Physical Therapy, and he also on the side runs a tremendous basketball website and motivational website called Hoop Commitment. None other than the great Mike Nilson. Mike, how goes life?
Oh man, it's always good to be with the old friend, an old teammate, and someone like you that just knows basketball. So I'm excited to chop it up with you today.
Well, good. Let's get right into it. And you know, Gonzaga has been a program that has gotten into the national limelight over the last 21 years or so. You were there at the very beginning. You are very close to the program now because as head strength and conditioning coach, you oversee everything. You work closest with the women's program, but you're there day to day on the men's side of the program, just seeing what's going on. If you were to take a walk back in time 25 years ago when you stepped on campus after being a player at Shorecrest High School in the Seattle area, could you have imagined what GU has become with facilities and what they are?
Not even a chance. First off, I'm so lucky that we weren't this big when I was in high school because there's no way I would have been able to make it here. But I vividly remember hanging out with my old roommate, teammate, Matt Santangelo, and it was our freshman year. And we thought we were dreaming big. And we're talking about, man, by the time we're seniors, not only are we going to make the NCAA tournament, but we're going to win a game. You know, we thought we were dreaming big. And it's just such a great example of, you know, dreams need to be even bigger than you think because reality is, you know, sometimes crazier than what we can dream up. And so, yeah, when I see the Volcker Center, when I see us being number one in the nation and, you know, not being mentioned as a mid-major anymore, I would have never dreamed that 20 years ago.
Well, let's go back to the start of your career at Gonzaga. And Gonzaga is a program that's been built through a lot of hard work and dedication by previous coaches, the current coaches, staff, but also players like yourself, guys that were overlooked at the high school level, had a huge belief in themselves to play at the Division I level, where guys would want to walk on, earn their opportunities, and then become a huge part of the program, such as yourself. What was the thought process for you when deciding to start at Gonzaga as a walk-on when I know you had many other opportunities?
The opportunities I had were smaller schools. I had one other Division I offer, but it was kind of a last-minute thing, and I think they were just trying to fill a spot. And when I came to Gonzaga as an opportunity to walk on, I came here in high school, met the coaches, met the players, and we did a little open gym. And I just played really well that day. And I'll never forget, it was raining that day. And Coach Munson walked me out to the car. And he says, I want you to know I don't walk out just anyone in the rain. I really believe you come on and walk on for a year, you know, have that work ethic that I know you have. I really believe that you'll be a scholarship player. And so for me to go somewhere where I'm wanted, that was a huge deal, especially being a walk-on. It's just that idea of having coaches saying, no, you're a player that I think fits into this system. And I was a pretty hard worker in high school. Going into my senior year, I didn't have any Division I scholarship offers. And so I made a commitment that I was going to carry a basketball with me every single place I went until I signed my Division I scholarship papers. And that was a rough year because a lot of people thought I might have been a little conceited or cocky. But the truth was that basketball was a reminder that I hadn't reached my goal yet. And so I carried that ball to class, ate lunch with it. I took it to the prom, to homecoming, everywhere. And so when I didn't get a scholarship and had to walk on at Gonzaga, that meant I'm carrying this basketball with me my whole freshman year. So I showed up to campus as a walk-on redshirt freshman, lowest man on the totem pole with a little worn-out basketball. And it was a tough go, showing up to class, and everyone's like, why are you carrying this basketball? Going to parties with the basketball, especially myself. I was a non-drinker, so I got a lot of strikes against me. I just always felt like a dork. But to me, that constant reminder of I got to get better. This dream is right in front of me. And so I think that's what really allowed me to make it, was just that mental toughness of I'm not quitting until I achieve my dream.
Mental toughness is something that is in the news a lot right now, simply because of the pandemic and everything that has occurred in the world, in particular to student athletes, kind of turning their world upside down. They can't hang out with their teammates off the court like they are used to. Their family and friends can't come to the games. How do you, as a strength coach that's around the different programs of Gonzaga on a day-to-day basis, how do you help them through these tough times right now?
Well, I think for me, it's about priorities and then making a decision, because I'm not mentally tough on everything. I look at what some of our military does. My brother's a police officer, and he was recon Marine, and he would tell me about some of the cold water training they do. And there's no way I'd make that, not even a chance, because it's not important to me. It's not important enough to make a decision that I'm not going to quit. Something like basketball was easy, because once you decide this is a priority, and I can't make basketball and baseball and football and golf and all these other things, you only can really focus on a few things. But once you decide basketball is your priority, then I think you can make a commitment, which is, it's not going to be easy. Matter of fact, if it was easy, it wouldn't mean as much. And so what we want to be able to do is expect the hard times, invite the hard times, because that's what's going to sift out all the other people. And once you make it a priority, and once you make that commitment, the idea is you just never quit. You keep going, you keep showing up. I mean, there were so many days where the coaches would it was almost like the military, where they want to make you quit. They want to break you down. They want to make you feel so insecure and so unconfident and so stupid that you quit. Because if they can make you feel stupid and incompetent, well, an arena full of 12,000 fans screaming against you is definitely going to break you. And so that was just a huge lesson of which is you just keep showing up. You have a horrible day of practice. The coaches just rail on you. You just feel like you don't belong, but you show up the next day and you keep putting the work in. And you do that day in and day out. And one day you turn around and you say, oh man, I'm one of the guys, or I'm a starter, or whatever that is. And I just think that idea of never quitting is so important.
You've been around GU in a number of different capacities as the head strength and conditioning coach, and you're overseeing multiple programs, but in particular, you're closest with the women's program right now. What are the constant variables from program to program at Gonzaga? Because there's been a tremendous amount of success, not just in men's basketball, but also women's basketball and some of the other sports. What are some of the constant factors that you see about success in athletics at Gonzaga?
Well, one of my favorite quotes is, if you want to know where you're going to be in 5 years, look at the people you hang out with and the books that you read. And I took it to heart for the last 20-something years. I make sure I surround myself with people that are the kind of people I want to be. And I read books on things where I want to master those arts. And so I look at all the coaches around here, and they're hanging out with each other. It's almost contagious, that idea of success and work ethic and just always getting better, that 1% rule. And so I think every program takes on the personality of their head coach. And we just happen to be really lucky that the team I work with, women's basketball, Coach Lisa Fortier, is all those things. She's constantly, getting mentors and reading books and just making sure that she's always getting smarter, better. And then her work ethic is so unbelievable. She's going to put the time in. And so I think our team kind of takes on that personality. And it's so fun. Both you and I have got to see, behind the curtains of men's basketball. And I would say it's the same thing. You just look at the work ethic. One of my favorite stories happened a couple of years ago, which was I have a little 13-year-old son. He was probably 10 or 11 at the time. And we like to sneak down in the McCarthy Center and get hoops up. We kind of like to dream big. And this was a week after the Final Four. And it was probably, 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday or Sunday. And we knew none of the players would be in. It's a nighttime on the weekend. And we roll in. This is a week after the Final Four. And I had already kind of pointed out to my son about Killian Tilly's big free throws. As a freshman, he has 2 free throws down the stretch to take us to the national championship game. And I have this kind of it's kind of like this thought that if you have a chance to ice the game with free throws and you miss one, the other team is somehow going to hit a 94-foot three-pointer and take it to overtime and you lose. It's just such a momentum shifter. And Tilly knocks down both free throws in the Final Four, make it to the championship game. And so I always tell my son, man, that's so incredible how he did that. Well, anyhow, now you fast forward a week and him and I are going into the gym 8 o'clock at night on a weekend. And there's only one person in there. We hear this ball bouncing. So we kind of sneak around the corner and Tilly's shooting free throws. And I'm like, it was like, I got goosebumps. Not only did I see it, but my son got to see that. And that kind of work ethic in the men's program is just common. These guys put in so much work outside of the scheduled practice times. And that's why I love being here. I've been at Gonzaga for 20 years because the players, the coaches, the athletic department staff, they motivate me.
I love that story about Killian knocking down those free throws, and then a week later you're walking around the corner into the gym and your son sees essentially what a lot of people call the unseen hours. You have to put in the hours when nobody's looking to be able to perform when everybody's looking. So that's a great story and example of that. It's that time of year again, folks. Conference tournaments are tipping off. Bubble teams are making their final push for a bid, while the best teams in the country are gearing up for a deep run. Auto bids will be punched, slippers will be fit, and our partners at DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook, are putting my listeners at the center of the action. If you bet $4 on an underdog in a select game this week and that underdog wins, you win $256. That's right, $256. Here's how it works. Download the app now and use the promo code FIELD68, FIELD, the number 6 and the number 8 when you sign up. Scroll through the list of select underdogs, bet $4 on them to win, and cash $256 when they do. There is no better way for you to put your college hoops knowledge to use than to put your money where your mouth is with DraftKings Sportsbook. It's safe, it's secure, it's reliable, and you can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience. So remember, that's code FIELD68, that's FIELD 68, to turn $4 into $256. For a limited time only, must be 21 years or older. Restrictions apply. Go to DraftKings.com for more details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. I want to ask, so with your 20-some years around the GU men's and women's program, is there one player that stands out to you as far as epitomizing leadership, work ethic, just preparation?
Oh, wow. Besides Dan Dickow?
That's a long time ago. I think there's been some guys that have surpassed me.
Well, you really put me on the spot because, some of the women's basketball players come to mind, the men's basketball players. I haven't worked with other sports for a few years, but, some of these rowers, golfers, tennis, volleyball players, they're so inspiring. And I have this kind of a format of 3 levels of leadership. Level 1 is synergy. It's your ability to create relationships with others. And that's kind of the common thread here at Gonzaga, which I don't know if it's like that in other Division I universities, which would be is people know how to connect and they know how to build relationships, and it's not cutthroat. You can kind of know that your teammates have their back. And I think that's why we've seen success across most of the sports here at GU, is because we have a mix of level 1 leaders. And then level 2 is sweat, your ability to lead by example. And now we have less of those players, the players that are not just going to show up early to practice and win the conditioning and stay late. But to really be a level 2 leader, you need to go to bed early. You need to eat breakfast. You have to do your rehab work, which is really difficult to do. And if you do those 2 levels well, if you know how to build relationships, synergy with teammates, and you know how to lead by example through sweat, then you earn the right to be a level 3 leader, which is to serve. And there's probably only 1 or 2 of those every year that I see, because you see a lot of athletes that will come in, they work hard, they're going to lead by example, but they're also going to kind of stay in their own lane. They might see one of their teammates showing up late to practice or not getting their shots up. And they're like, well, I kind of lead by example. That's not my style to say anything. And I think, don't get me wrong, leading by example is really high level leadership. But the highest level of leadership is to serve your teammate when you see them showing up late to practice, to have a conversation. Don't wait for the coach to bring it up. You bring it up. Hey, how's everything going? You okay? I noticed you show up late today. Need a ride? Need a reminder? And then if they don't, well, get your butt to practice on time. Like, this is important. And so those are the ones that are few and far between. And the best level 3 leader I've ever seen is John Stockton. And we've got to play hoops with him for the last 15 years on Sundays. And you see that 3 levels of leadership right in action. You see level 1 because he's the one that calls every one of us, texts us, making sure we know what time that the gym opens up. He unlocks the gym. He literally sweeps the floor for us. And so because of that, we have a lot of trust and we have a relationship with him. And then, from playing, this is not a normal pickup game where you could just kind of go half speed and get some threes on a fast breakup. I mean, every shot matters, and he's the hardest worker on the floor. And that's why he's earned the right to be a level 3 leader, which is, I don't know if you've been there on the times where maybe he's kicked the ball across the gym or a couple times. Yeah, he's literally
have at some point.
He's literally turned the lights off. He's like, it's my gym. If you guys don't raise to my standards, you don't play hard enough, I'm going to turn the lights off and basketball's over. And the reason why that's a huge, big time leadership move is because he has the other 2 levels. He's built a relationship with us, and we know that he's walking the walk. He's leading by example. And so those things only happen maybe once a year, but when we're not raised to his standard, he cares enough to serve us. And so I think that leadership piece is crucial. And we have a few of those, maybe every year, every other year here at Gonzaga.
It's tremendous how you break down those leadership traits, as well as the ability to get to different levels of leadership. And I 100% agree with you with John and how he fits into that, and also the stories. And you beat me to it, because I was actually going to ask you about John, because it seems as if every guy that has come through Gonzaga's program has had I don't want to call it a aha moment, but it's like, that's John Stockton. And you meet him for the first time, and then over time you get to know him even more, and he fits that description that you shared so brilliantly. What was your first meeting with John?
I think it's probably the same as all of our meetings with John, which is, I was a walk-on redshirt freshman, so I was already nervous, but I showed up to the gym in the preseason, and I look across the gym, and it's John Stockton. And when you see a famous person in person live, they look a little different. And I'm like, I think this is John Stockton, And so, of course, I'm talking to some of the other guys. Is that John Stockton? And they're like, oh, yeah. I'm like, what's it like to play with him? And they said, oh, it's great. He'll pass you the ball, but if you miss your first shot, he'll never pass it to you again. And so now I'm like extra nervous, but I went over there and I introduced myself. I said, hey, I'm Mike Nilson. And he said, oh, nice to meet you. I'm John Stockton. And I'm thinking, of course I know you're John Stockton, but it's funny because I've talked about 10 or 20 different players, and they all say the same thing. He's going to shake your hand. He's going to look you in the eye, introduce himself. And that's just, that's just epitomizes John. And then I didn't realize it, but at the time, that preseason, it kind of was set up to where, we had the 10 core guys that would kind of be on a team, they'd be one team, another team. And then we kind of had a team of overseas pros, walk-ons, John Stockton. And so that whole preseason, I was on his team. And I'll never forget that first game or two, I was just trying to get myself in a position where I could not miss a shot, like every time he drive to the hole, I would kind of maneuver. So I was always being guarded. But if you play with John, he's going to find a way to get you open. And so he was driving down in the middle of the key. I'm on the baseline. My guy comes to help, and he dumps it out. And I'm like 15 feet away, so I'm wide open. And there's no way I could do anything except for shoot. And I'm like, this is a tough shot. When you're on the baseline, 15-footer, it kind of seems like a gimme, but you have no depth perception. And so the whole time, I'm not even thinking that I want to make it. I'm just like, please don't airball this. And my arms are a little tight. And thank goodness for muscle memory, because I went up and I, shot that shot just like you millions of times. Muscle memory took it in and I swished it. And that was my favorite preseason of my whole life, because from then on I was on his team. And if you can make a layup and an open 15-footer, you're like Karl Malone. And so now the coaches are literally calling my parents, Mike is better than we even thought he was. He's incredible, because I'm playing on John's team and I'm like one of the best players in the whole gym. And so I'm thinking, I think they're going to ask me not to redshirt, and I think I might start. And then John leaves to go to the NBA. And then the harsh reality of how good I really was hit me hard. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually suck if I'm not playing with John. I got to create my own shot, like I'm taking contested 3-pointers now, get my shot blocked. But he's a special player, man. I mean, I've never played with anyone that can make you so open and make you think that you're so good.
That's a couple tremendous stories about John. And I'm 100% the exact same way that I met John for the first time. My redshirt year, I walk into the gym for open pickup runs, and I walk up to John and I introduce myself, stick my hand out, say I'm Dan Dickow, shake his hand. He exact same thing. He looked me in my eyes, shook my hand, and say I'm John Stockton. And I walked away thinking, you don't have to tell me who you are. You and Michael Jordan have been my two favorite players my whole youth growing up. But yes, many guys have the same first time meeting John stories. I want to ask you a little bit now about hoop commitment. It's something that I don't necessarily want to call it a side project for you, but it seems to me to be a passion project for you. It's something that you've kind of really poured a lot of time and energy into, providing a resource of information for people, whether it's parents, coaches, or student athletes, about getting better at basketball through other things than just drill work, through nutrition, through leadership, through recovery and rehab and workout ideas. Give us a little bit more information about hoop commitment and maybe how people can find out your podcast or your website.
Well, it's definitely a passion project. Every summer I would go on vacation and kind of rethink, what does the next 5 or 10 years look like? And this was about 12 years ago. I was laying on a beach in Mexico and I was thinking, man, if I had $1 billion, what would I do with my life? Of course, you go on vacation, you kind of lay at the beach for a while, but at some point you got to do something. And that was a huge aha moment, because I thought, even if I had $1 billion, I would still study basketball specific nutrition, training, and leadership. Right now I just finished nutrition certification. It does not make me one extra penny. There's no reason to do it except for I'm so interested in it. And same thing with leadership. I'm working on my PhD. I'm about to pick it back up after having another kid. And I don't take, I'm not taking these classes because I want to have it on my resume. I don't need a resume. I just love learning about leadership and training, strength conditioning. And so I just feel like I'm cheating the system, because that's my full-time job. My job is to be an expert in basketball, nutrition, training, and leadership. And so what's great about hoop commitment it's just a passion project. It's a way for me to document, organize, and be able to kind of have like a journal of my thoughts. And the nice thing is it's not a money maker. So it's not like, oh gosh, well, if I don't start making money soon, I'm going to have to close up shop. I just do this because I love it. And so that's why I know it's going to be sustainable. It makes, me a better athlete. It fills my cup. I have 3 little kids that love basketball. So it fits into family life. It fits in my work life. It just flows. And then about 1.5 years ago, I thought, well, maybe I'll try a podcast. And I tell you what, you probably know this now doing your podcast. This is really cheating the system, because now what I've done is I just found all of these mentors or people I look up to, experts in the field of nutrition, training, and leadership. And then I just pick their brains for 30 minutes to an hour. Like I'm on Wednesday, I'm meeting with the Houston Rockets strength conditioning coach. And I followed Willie's work for a while. And I'm like, hey, he gets to train, Westbrook and all of these like unbelievable players. And so I just want to pick his brain on conditioning. And so under the disguise of the podcast, I say, hey, man, can I interview you for 30 minutes to an hour? And I just have a whole list of questions that I wonder about at the NBA level. How do you manage guys that are high minutes and still condition them? What do you do with players that aren't motivated? All of these things that, that are coming through my head. And so, yeah, if you're interested in basketball specific nutrition, training, or leadership, you can kind of join my journey by going on the podcast world and checking out Hoop Commitment. If you're interested in the website stuff, I just document everything. And so just go to hoopcommitment.com and you'll see all the articles I've written. Everything's basketball. Of course, if you like tennis or golf, you're going to get stuff out of the leadership piece and maybe even out of the nutrition piece. But if you're a basketball person, this is definitely the website for you.
Well, I agree. I've listened to most of your podcast episodes, and they're very good, and I enjoy listening to them. And I'm looking forward to listening to the upcoming episodes. You've recently had some things that you've had to kind of work through, just like you have motivated and helped your student athletes get through. Are you comfortable sharing a little bit more about some of the challenges that you've had to overcome in these last couple months?
Oh, yeah, of course. I think sharing's so important because this was about, maybe almost a year ago, maybe 6-8 months ago, I started having these chest pains and I was just feeling constant pressure on my chest. And as you mentioned, Dan, I'm a business owner. And so our physical therapy clinic, we had to shut down, and Gonzaga was shut down, and I have rental houses and I have tenants calling me saying, hey, I don't know if I can pay rent. And I was just like feeling this pressure, but I just thought it was stress. And I'm really good at taking care of myself. So I doubled down on sleep and nutrition and meditation. I was cutting out some of these extracurricular things. I'm like, I'm just going to really make sure that I'm handling my stress well. And it wasn't getting better. And so for months and months, I was just having this constant pressure on my chest. And when I'd go work out to kind of relieve stress, I was feeling kind of just weak. And thank goodness my wife says, you got to go get this checked out. And I'm like, it's fine. It's just stress. And she would not let off me. And so finally I went and got checked out, and we found out that I was just born with a bad aortic valve. It was just a birth defect. And over time, my valve had just worn out. And so I found that out in November. And in December, I had open heart surgery. And the reason I like to share was up until November, I didn't know anyone that had open heart surgery. I just felt a little bit alone. But then once I shared with people, and, you don't want to have people feel sorry for yourself or put them in a bad position where they're like, I don't know how to respond. But I started sharing what I was going through. And it was so cool to have people reach out and say, hey, my dad went through that. My uncle went through that. I just had this strength coach at Furman College reach out 3 weeks ago. He had the exact same surgery that I had. And nobody has this surgery, which is you not only replace your aortic valve, but you take your pulmonary valve and switch it over. It's a really difficult surgery. And this strength coach, who does the exact same job I do working with basketball, had the exact same surgery 2 months before me. And I tell you what, it's so fun to be able to pick their brain. Roni Turioff, your old teammate, reached out to me and said, welcome to the Zipper Club. And you go from kind of feeling a little bit scared, uncertain, what does this mean? And then when you have a team around you to pick you up and say, hey, even if they haven't been through it, like so many people haven't had open heart surgery, but they said, hey, can I shovel your driveway? Can I take down your Christmas tree? Can I bring you dinner? Man, and even if you don't take people up on that, all of a sudden it was like this huge blessing of, I knew I had a bench. I knew I had a team. I didn't realize how deep my bench was, how many people really cared and stepped up. So yeah, it's actually turned out to be a blessing. I'm back at work. I'm really tired. Last week was my first week back at work, and I was like high-fiving everyone. I'm so excited to be here and see everyone at Gonzaga. And by 3:00, I just hit the wall and I crashed. And so I got to be a little smarter with my return to work protocols. But it's actually been a blessing in disguise.
Glad to hear you're on the mend. You're healing up well. I can definitely tell in your voice your enthusiasm for life, for Gonzaga basketball, for the game of basketball is still there. And maybe it is as big as ever. So, Mike, I really appreciate you joining today, sharing some stories, talking about hoop commitment, and just breaking it down on leadership and your experiences. So, for Dan Dickow,